of you, a lot of you I should say, are familiar, backed by popular demand from Kansas State. Art Barnaby has been here. This is his third year now speaking, and admittedly, you know, the first year Art was here was before the Farm Bill was signed in, and admittedly our heads are spinning, okay? And last year Art came with news of the Farm Bill being signed, so forecasting what was going on, and we actually went through some worksheets, and I know that helped tremendously with people really being able to apply it back to their operations. Well, now we've got a full year of the Farm Bill under our belt, and initially, when I knew Art was coming and so forth, I wasn't sure how relevant the information was going to be, even though I'm working with a lot of you in that realm. After hearing Art speak yesterday, it's very, very timely, and obviously for the life of this Farm Bill, we're going to want to be dialed into some of the information that Art is sharing. So Art has got a long resume, but I'll just touch on a few things. Comes from Elk County, Kansas, comes from a diversified farming background, and has gotten multiple degrees, and as Art would say, don't worry about the degrees, it's more about what we're doing with the knowledge and what's in front of us here today. So, but continues to work extensively across the country with extension programs, but also has been very integrally involved in not only some of what goes on at Capitol Hill regarding specifically to ag, but Art has been around the crop insurance industry for a long time, helping develop some of that. This happens to be the 20th year of the revenue coverage, the CRC, that we first remember when it came out, and then it migrated and the addition of revenue, or RA, and now we've got the two combined into one. So if you've got any other specific questions afterward, Art's going to stick around to answer those as well. So there are handouts on your table for this material. And again, very interactive, so don't hesitate.
Okay, I'm mic'd up. In the back of the handout material, you'll notice that I do have some things there on Sensenbrenner, I think I'm saying that right, and Kine. There are two congressmen from Wisconsin. They've proposed some major cuts to crop insurance. The big one is they want to eliminate the harvest price. And that would screw up a lot of marketing plans if they eliminate the harvest price. I'm not going to be able to get to that material, but I had the slides already, so I just sent them along with it. Glad to take questions on it. You're always free to call me later. I don't think it's an immediate threat. On the other hand, I have gotten questions from farmers who wanted to know, with the downturn in the farm economy, any chance that Washington is going to come with another sort of enhancement during the direct payment years. Washington had 1 year in there where they doubled the size of payments. I don't know if you remember that or not, but it's been a few years ago. My answer to that is that right now, no, I don't see anything else coming along. What you've got is what you've got, and the other question is, do I get a do-over? In other words, can I change my mind about the program I selected for the farm program? And I don't see that happening either. The folks I talk to, your friends in Washington, they're scared to death that if they ever open up that farm bill, there would be all kinds of mischief going on at this point. So they think we're better off staying right where we're at. So I think what I'm going to show you is what you can expect until the end of this farm bill cycle. As you can tell, I have been at this a long time. In fact, I had a couple of farmers I was listening to back in Kansas and overheard them talking, and one of them was going, God, that Barnaby's old. I'm surprised he's still here making presentations. He really needs to retire. And his friend looked at him and said, yeah, I know what you mean. In fact, I just assumed I'd missed reading his obituary. Anyway, but I did check this morning and let Lynn know I'm the same age as Hillary Clinton. So so if you think she's young, then I'm right there with her. So we're the same age. For what that's worth.
Are you running for president?
No. It would be fun to run Secretary of Agriculture for a while. There's a few changes I'd like to make to the crop insurance program, but nonetheless, I don't think that's gonna happen either. Anyway, what we're gonna talk about is Farm Bill. First thing I'm showing you is the map of Minnesota. And what we did is last year, and a lot of my previous work, I ended up putting data analysis in tables. Now, the new thing is everybody wants a visual graphic and they want it in maps. So, you know, I may be old, but I gotta keep learning new things, mostly because the staff is about, all the staff that we have now is all basically young enough that they could be my children. And so they're really, gentlemen, there's kind of shaking his hand, he's kind of probably been there, but they're pushing me, you gotta learn something new. So we're trying to put everything in maps. It does have some advantages, you can see things. But the reason I've got this up here is Minnesota has an unusual situation. These three counties right here, FSA splits them into two, and they treat them as though they're two separate counties. You have two separate payments within that same county. And as a result, this is commercial software that we have that creates these maps. You know, we're creating the numbers that go in the maps, but the maps themselves is commercial software. And it doesn't know that there's, if you got a county, two counties with the same name, it doesn't know how to handle that. And essentially, that's what you got. Is that you got two counties the way they're being treated, but they've got the same name. Well, the map doesn't know how to split that. Obviously, this is an FSA thing. So in those three counties, if you happen to be interested in those counties, all I can do is, when you see the numbers we have for the other counties, if that's material to you, if you just email me, someone will get back to you and give you the numbers that are there. They're just not able to put them in the map. And we'd be glad to do that. If we don't respond back right away, remember we're a bureaucracy. We can lose things just like any other bureaucracy can. And so this right on idiot respond call. I sent that to you. I need the data now, and then you'll really get our attention. So trust me, we don't deliberately not respond, but every once in a while, I can't tell you we don't lose one or two messages around the office. Remind you of what happened last year. These were the final prices. You'll notice where the corn came in, $3.70. You remember the reference price for corn if you went to the price loss coverage program, the PLC program? It was $3.70, wasn't it? So how much was the payment under PLC? 0. It's just right there at the trigger, so it paid absolutely nothing last year. Now, it may pay this year, but it didn't pay anything last year. Just out of curiosity, though, since almost the big percentage of the U.S. of corn farmers went the ARC route, just out of curiosity, did anybody here go PLC? Or did you all go into the ARC program? ARC? That would be my assumption. And we're going to spend most of our time on the ARC because it's got a lot more unknowns. But the PLC program, basically what that was put in was for peanuts and rice. And there's some big payments going to peanuts and rice in the PLC program. But it, at least the first year, would not have paid on corn, also didn't pay on wheat. Wheat's a $5.50 reference price, and did not pay on soybeans, and I'm sure that's another crop here that would matter to you. It did not pay there either. The reference price there is $8.40, so it was quite a ways above it. That was last year. And then these are the payments from last year. Where the is shaded darker green, those are the counties with the bigger payments. So as the payment gets bigger, so you can kind of get a gist of what it looks like around you. Let's see, where are we at? I'm not sure. We're in Sibley, right? Sibley, yeah. I'm not seeing it on the screen. It's got to be down in here somewhere. Anyway.
It's not it's right under my palm.
And this is the corn payments. That was soybeans. This is corn. And this is all from last year. So whatever you've got, you've already got the payments. That's not particularly interesting, is it? Because what you want to know is what you're going to get next year. Yeah, that's the correct answer. He wants to know what he's going to get next year. And we're going to go out on a limb and give you a number, which you will promptly write down. And if I get invited back next year and I'm wrong, you're going to remind me that I'm wrong. So I will tell you right now, the corn and soybean numbers at this point are extremely shot in the dark. But we're all set up. And what's going to happen on February the 18th, NASS will put out its first county yields for corn and soybeans. Wheat numbers I will show you, and the reason I'm showing you a lot of wheat numbers, I'm from Kansas, so I've got to show you wheat. But the other thing is we're way into the marketing year. Do you know when the marketing year starts for wheat? It's June 1 and it ends on May 31st. What about corn? September 1st through the following August 31st. So we're 6 months into the marketing year on the wheat, and that really sets a lot of the price. We're only 3 months into the marketing year on corn, so the price is going to move around on corn, and I have no yield information other than KSU estimates. And yesterday, or I guess the day before it was, one of the gentlemen says, you're way too high on the estimated yield. It isn't that high. So if you look at my number and you think it's too high, then plug in your own number, and come February the 18th, we'll have a much better estimate. The other good news is come February 18th, if you've got a computer, you'll simply be able to log on and come on to agmanager.info and look at the numbers and see what it is with the updated data, because we're going to update it as we get new data from USDA, because that'll put the estimate closer and closer to the final number. So by March 1, I think we'll have a really good estimate on corn and soybeans, one that probably is going to be close to the final number. And you'll be able to get that yourself. Don't have a computer, don't like computers, don't want to run a computer, you can call Robin on our staff. She's a good Wisconsin gal, but she takes calls from Minnesota too. She'll look the number up for you. She'll bring the map up and give it to you if you'd rather do it that way. Either way, we'll try to get the information to you. It's our best interest to get it out there. Now, you all remember exactly how that ACRE program, or excuse me, I'm one program behind. That ARC program worked, right? You all understand the details and everything? You all know exactly what you signed up for. By the way, do you know what that is? Just out of curiosity, you probably, with the new elections going on, there's a lot of hitting on Wall Street going on about writing derivatives such as credit default swaps and what's the other one? CDO, what is that? Credit debt obligation instruments. What do you think ARC is? It's a derivative created by the government. It means a whole lot of parts put together. And it's somewhat complicated when you not agree with that. And so let's go over and review the numbers again, how they were put together. And then we can talk about whether or not we have any confidence in the number that we actually plug into the formulas. Well, PLC is obviously the easiest one. But most corn farmers did not go this route. PLC pays the difference between the marketing year average price. That is determined by USDA, by the agency of NASS, and it's this, whatever number they come up with. You may not agree with it, but that is it, and it's not subject to change. And the reference price times the farm's program yield, FSA program yield. How many of you, even though you went into ARC, updated your program yields? That was a really smart thing to do, in my opinion. And the reason is, it doesn't have any impact on what you're going to get paid under the ARC program. But at the end of the 5 years, what do you think the chances are they might actually extend this farm bill like they did the last one? Do you think things are going to get any easier to get legislation through in Washington? If you're betting no, and I'm kind of betting no, then the logical thing is they're going to extend the farm bill. Now, you may want to switch back to the other program. And if you switch back to the other program, because the market and everything may look totally different by the end of the farm bill, at the end of the 5 years. If you got the higher program yield, then you'll benefit from that. So it gives you more flexibility when you get to the end of this contract. I don't think they can change the contract on you while we're in it, but at the end, and I guess it runs out, it started in 14, so it'll run out in 19. And my guess is there's at least a high chance that they'll extend it, and if they extend it, then at least what they did last time, and I'm sure they'd have to do the same thing, you'll have to have another sign up and you'll get to decide do you want to stay with your existing program or do you want to switch back. Anyway, you take that program yield, times your base acres, times 85%. 15% of the acres, remember, don't get any payment, period. And then if you've got acres that have no base, even though they're planted and they can be insured, they get no payment. Okay, automatic. In a wheat example, the marketing year average price for wheat, and $5 is pretty close to the estimate that's out there right now. If it turns out to be $5, then it's the difference between the $5.50 reference price and the $5, which is 50 cents, times your farm's program yield, the FSA, which you may have updated, times your 100-acre base in this example, times 85%, and the payment would be $1,700. To convert this and run corn, you just change the numbers. You plug in whatever your estimate is for the price that's going to end up over this marketing year, which won't end until August. You plug in 370 here, and then you just work as you plug in your own yield, and you work through the same numbers, and that's how you can calculate what your payment would have been under PLC. Yes, sir.
Don't you have to take out the sequestration too, or?
Yeah, you do, possibly. Possibly. We can't tell you for sure there's not going to be sequestration. And that's always, and they are subject to sequestration payments. Since you raised the question, are crop insurance indemnity payments subject to sequestration? What do you think?
Probably. Yes. I don't think so.
Nope, they're contract. If QBE and who funded me along with AgQuest to come up here, you probably thought Kansas State just loved you and they sent me up here to talk to you and pay the bills. No, what would happen is you line up lawyers 10 feet deep to sue everybody in the insurance industry if they didn't pay you. Yeah, that's what would happen. No, they're not subject to sequestration. There would be no way that they're going to get that done. We have a court case to back that up too. This came up with conservation reserve payments probably close to 20 years ago when they did some sequestration of government payments. They tried to apply it to conservation payments, and it was ruled that that was a contract and the government could not change the contract. Whereas this other is supposedly an annual contract. You do have to sign up every year, you just can't change your plan. You still have to go to the FSA and sign up every year. So it's an annual thing. Whereas the CRP, you sign up for 10 years, or in some cases 15. Thank you for the question. ARC pays the difference between the 5-year Olympic average price, and again, we're talking about that NAS price, not your elevator price. It's not futures. It's determined by USDA, times the 5-year Olympic average county yield. Again, the county yield now is not the NAS county yield, which is the most common one. What it is the county yield as approved by FSA. And there will be some slight differences between the NAS yield and the county yield that's actually used. So that's all government determined numbers. We've got an attorney in the room. There's a group of attorneys out of Oklahoma that apparently are trying to line up litigants to challenge how that county yield is determined. It's pretty obscure how they come up with the number. But nonetheless, until something changes, I don't think they'll get very far. I'm not an attorney, so I'm probably going to get in trouble for offering an opinion, because the Secretary has a lot of room to determine what the county yield is. It has language in there like subject to the Secretary's interpretation.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I don't think they'll get very far with it. But anyway, it is whatever USDA says it is for right now. And it's times 86%. The 86% is in the statute. And then from that, you deduct from it the marketing year average price, and that's for the year that will end on August the 31st, times the actual county yield. And then you pay the difference. As of today, you don't know either one of these numbers, do you? You don't know either one of those numbers. They're all forecast. And even the ones I give you will be forecast. And as far as the arithmetic, the way that works, in the case of wheat, the Olympic average price is 670 times 35 bushels times the Olympic average county yield, which is 86%, and that's in the statute. That's a $201 and change for a guarantee. What will count against it if the price ends up being $5 times the actual county yield, and now whatever the FSA determines that to be, in this example, 38 bushels, multiply those two numbers, that's $190. You pay the difference between it and the guarantee, which is $11.67 per acre, times 100-acre base times 85%. That gets you to $991, call it $992. As you can see in this example, the ARC pays less than what the PLC would have paid. It would have paid you $1,700. Here you're getting a little under $1,000. In any case, it also has a stop loss in it, and it's equal to 10% of the gross guarantee, or the reference guarantee, if you will. And that's simply 10% times the 5-year Olympic average price times the Olympic average county yield. In this case, that's $23.45. In other words, it's the same number before you apply the 86% figure. Times 100 acre base times 85% means your absolute limit is $1,993. In addition to that, it's subject to a $125,000 payment limit, and there's also a means test of $900,000 adjusted gross income. So if you are above $900,000 in adjusted gross income, and I think it has to be over the last 3 years, you're not eligible for any of these payments. So what do you do if you're over the $900,000 figure? You split it up with many farms. That's what happens. Those farms get split up. There's a lot of farms that get split into multiple farms, particularly if there's sons and other folks involved. A lot of creative stuff goes on here. And the further south you go, the more creative I think it gets. Nonetheless, it's in there. Okay? Now, here is the reference prices for all of the crops here on this list. I highlighted in red the ones that we track and the ones that are probably the most important here, corn and soybeans. Over here is the last estimate, and this is the forecast of USDA. This is their forecast. It's a little older than ours. Here is the numbers coming from K-State. If it were me, I'd use USDA numbers because it's better you use their numbers, and if they're wrong, you're mad at them rather than mad at me. But I do put out our own estimates, and in terms of the payments, estimated payments I'm going to show you, they're based on a $3.68 corn price. That's where we're at right now. As I said, that number's going to get a lot better. You don't care about sorghum. This is wheat. In the case of wheat, the marketing year starts on June 1, and you can see we're 6 months into the marketing year. You can see these prices are all in black. What that means is that they have been published by USDA. NASS has already published these numbers, so you're no longer forecasting what that monthly price is going to be for the 6 months. On top of that, you'll notice that these prices are weighted. It's a weighted average. It's not a simple average. And those weights are based on what percentage of the crop is sold in each month. So notice that the first 3 months of the marketing year on wheat have really big weights. And half the wheat price is determined by September the 1st. Half the wheat price. Now, those are technically forecast, but they don't change a lot from year to year. So it's not a very big stretch to forecast the weights. The weights are relatively easy to forecast. They don't really move around. The one exception has been grain sorghum, and that was a screwy deal. In the case of grain sorghum, the Chinese decided they didn't want to buy genetically modified corn, which was just anti-trade kind of stuff, is what it really was about. So they bought grain sorghum instead. And the only way they could buy grain sorghum was to bid up the price, and grain sorghum was running as much as $1 over corn. $1 over corn. It has less feeding value than corn does, and it has the same ethanol yield as does corn. So the yield on ethanol is the same. Feeding value is a little less. Grain sorghum guys would argue with me on that point, but most feeders will tell you it's a little less. Well, the point is, when you're bidding $1 over, where did the sorghum all went over there, and that made the prices higher here, eliminating government payments under this. Now, what happens when the Chinese stop buying, which they did? Well, the grain sorghum basis went the other way, and like a lot of markets, in my view anyway, overcorrected the other direction. So now we've got an extremely weak basis on grain sorghum, and part of that is, yes, the cattle feeders in Kansas recognizes that grain sorghum is now the cheaper feed source in order to feed their cattle, but if you feed cattle, you don't change the ration in the middle of the feeding period. So you got to wait until that pens get cleared out before you put the next pen in. Now, when you start getting the new pens in, my thinking is a lot of that's going to get fed to grain sorghum. They'll go back to the cheaper grain, and then the basis will come back up. But we're probably a year away from getting all that to work out. So you talk about free markets. The problem is you got a lot of people messing around in the free market, and their governments that are messing around. And you know, it is what it is. You can't do anything about it. It's just the way it is. Anyway, at this point, we're at 494, and I don't think that number's going to move a lot, and that's because it's all front-end loaded here. That's why the 494 I'm comfortable with. move a penny or two, but I don't expect big changes at this point. On the other hand, corn's got a lot of room for movement. First of all, notice that there's only 3 prices that are now NASS numbers. The rest these are all forecasts coming. Anything in red is forecasted from K-State. Over here are the weights. Notice something unusual about January? Has a really big weight. When does NASS put out that January number? It doesn't come out until about the 25th, 26th, somewhere along there of February. I just say March 1. On March 1, we'll have that January price. And it's really important because, see, it typically has a really high weight. So that price has a big impact on what the final number is. So once you get past January's number, which won't come out till the end of February, then you start having some real confidence in what this final number is going to look at, which I'm at 368 right now. Why does that January number carry a big weight? You like to pay income taxes? He's laughing. Not really. No, not really. So you try to avoid them. And what do a lot of farmers do?
Deferred sales.
They defer the sales. Yeah. They don't sell. They move it into the next tax year. And that's why you end up with sales in January. Why do you end up with sales in January? Why not March or something? Yeah, the banker calls. He says, I got to have cash. That's the only thing they understand. 4-letter word, got to have cash. The answer to everything. You know, when they call, there's only one answer, cash. Nothing else, just cash. Not how are you, how are the kids, how's the cash? That's what mine calls me. So you got to have cash. And so, how do you get cash? Well, you got to go load up the truck and take some grain to town. And you get cash. So that's why this number's got a big weight. And March 1, that's why I'm telling you, all of my numbers I'm giving you today are going to be a lot better on March 1. So if you really need to know what this number is, and some places, some people do, because their cash flows are that tough. They haven't been able to clear their operating line. I understand you had some really good yields here, so probably you were able, many of you were able to clear your operating lines this year, not because of the price, but because the yield was so good. But that may not happen in the future, and these payments become even more important at the margin. Okay, in the case of soybeans, same story. The heavy weight here is in January, and after you get the January price in, this number is going to start to stabilize. Right now we're at 879. This is where we were at on March 1st last year. These were the numbers that we put out on our website on March 1st. We had wheat at $6. It ended up being $5.99. And, excuse me, we were at $5.98 on March 1. It ended up at $5.99. Corn, we were at $3.81. It ended up at a final price of $3.70. So I was 11 cents over on the corn. And on sorghum, I was quite a ways off. That basis just drove me crazy all year. And on the soybeans, we were at 10.09. We ended up at 10.05, so we were off 4 cents. So, you know, looking back and, you know, the modeling is all the same. So at least last year, we were within a few pennies by March 1 of what the final price was. But it moves around, or can move around a lot since then. So you want to go check and see where the most current numbers are at. If you bring up our software on the website, this is the way it's going to look. You probably have a hard time seeing that. This is why you should always sit on the front row when you come to a meeting rather than take the back row chair so you can see the small print. But in any case, it'll look like this when you first bring it up. And obviously you can't tell anything other than, well, I believe that's Minnesota, and that's about as far as you're going to get. What you got to do is go on. Over here is where the menus are. And again, we don't control this. It's because it's commercial software as far as the mapping part goes. You have to click on this little item right here and pick off the state that you want. In this case, it says Oklahoma. You would pick off Minnesota, and then you have to pick off the practice you want. Here it says all. What that means is it's a county that the irrigated and dryland acres are all combined together into a single number. And that's most of Minnesota. There are a few counties where you have them split, but most of them are combined. So most of you are going to be picking all, picking Minnesota, picking all. If not, then you would pick either irrigated or non-irrigated along with the state of Minnesota. And then when it comes up, again, it's going to be very small. One way you can expand the size of the map is hit the plus sign, sort of obvious. Hit the minus sign if you want to shrink it. If it's too big for you, you could hit the minus sign. I don't know why you would do that, but you could. And the other thing is you'll have some counties that may show up as blank. That doesn't mean there isn't any data there. These counties right here, they're split counties. In other words, the yield is split between irrigated and dryland. These counties, the yields are all combined. Irrigated and dryland is all combined together. So if you see counties that are blank, probably split is the answer. Now, there's an easier way to expand the size of the map, in my opinion, is go down here, rather than click on the plus sign, click on this arrow sign, and then another menu pops up over here on the right. And what you're looking for is this little square box has a magnifying glass in it. You just click on that, and then you go over here and you outline the state that you're interested in. Just draw a border around it, and it'll highlight it, and it'll look like that. And then as soon as you let go of the key, it'll pop up and look like that. And that's how you pick off your state. It's not real difficult, but if you don't know how mechanics work, it could drive you crazy. If you have any questions, you can always call Robin or Rich, or send them an email and they'll respond back if you're having problems getting the software to run for one reason or another. Anyway, that's how it'll come up on the screen. If you want to highlight a certain part of the state, you can just bring up that same menu. It's back over here. I'm not showing it on screen, but it's there. You click on it, you do exactly the same thing. You just draw a border around the section of state you want to look at, let go of it, and it'll expand it out into a bigger menu. So it'll look at just part of the state if you want to. I have some slides here in a minute that'll show you exactly how that might look. Once you can pick out have a big enough map that you can pick off your county, you just put your cursor over the top of it, and this comes up on the screen. And what it's telling you is the county here is Thomas, that's fairly obvious. It's telling you the practice is all, which means irrigated and non-irrigated are combined together. The estimated payment in this county is $27.69. That's KSU's estimate. And the maximum payment is also $27.69. Now, that's based on an estimated yield of 40.4 bushels, and it's a NASH yield. That's what that designation tells you. If it's our estimate, it'll say KSU on it. And right now, all corn and soybean numbers will show KSU. The NASS number is a stronger number. So wherever a NASS number was published, that's the number we use, okay? Now, where does the NASS number come from? It's a survey of farmers. Now, when you get that survey, in the mailbox, did any of you ever get the survey? Want to know what your yields are? You get the survey. Okay, you guys get the survey. Get it in the mailbox, right? Take it out of the mailbox. Can't wait. Go right to the house. Pull all of your records and calculate those yields right down to the tenth of the bushel, and you send it back promptly, right? Yeah, right. Or do you throw it in the round file and say the heck with it? What's the penalty for not filling it out? Nothing. Nothing. And if you don't fill it out, and if enough people don't fill it out, then NASS doesn't publish a yield for that county. So you have a lot of counties where there's no estimated yield from NASS because they didn't get enough surveys responding back, okay? Now, frustration I have with this, and I've shared this with everybody in Washington who will talk to me, there's a better source of data. Because you have to report your yields to crop insurance, right? And some of these counties may be 80% or more insured. How many surveys do they actually get back? If they get a 20% response, that's a pretty good survey response. 20% of the ones they sent out. With crop insurance, you maybe have practically the whole county actual numbers that are being reported. Secondly, you're sitting there, well, I went to that meeting the other day, and you know, if the county yield is lower, I get a bigger payment. So rather than report the 200 bushels I actually produce, you write down 50 and send it in. What's the penalty for sending in 50 bushels? Nothing. Now, what do? Well, they consider that an outlier and they throw it out. They call that cleaning the data. And some of that is judgment call, obviously. Okay? What's the penalty for misreporting your crop insurance yields? I will tell you about a case in North Carolina. Now, you guys don't work this way, but those guys down there in North Carolina, they're a breed apart. This guy had tomato plants, and they were insured under federal crop, and the tomato market wasn't very good. So they weren't going to make any money. In other words, they were worth more in insurance than they were harvesting it. So he gets the bright idea to have his employee go down the rows of tomatoes with a broom and beat them over. And then they went to town, bought some cocktail ice from the grocery store and dumped ice on it and filed a claim. For that little effort, it turns out that employees are not real loyal when threatened with jail time. So they flipped right away. So if you're going to do this, don't involve an employee. But by filing that false claim, he got 72 months in the big house. Yeah. Yeah, probably the guy was 6'8" was his cellmate, you know. Bubba, big Bubba was his cellmate, no doubt about it. But the other half of the coin, his wife also signed that. And of course her story was, I had no idea what he was doing. I had no idea he was filing a false claim. Apparently it doesn't matter, because she also got 48 months in the big house. It wasn't 72, but she got 48 months in the big house with Big Bertha as a cellmate. So I guess the moral of the story is don't do that, but back to my original point, those numbers that you're reporting for crop insurance are much solider than anything you're getting from NAS. And so when they calculate these county yields as far as determining payments, in my view, they should use the crop insurance data to determine the county yield. It's there, there's no reason not to use it, and then the only time, and that would be your first choice, the only time you would go to NAS data is if there was no crop insurance data. In other words, you had a county that didn't have many insureds, then you could go use the NAS data. The way it works now is they start with the NAS number, and if there is no NAS number, then they may go look at the crop insurance data. And then if there's no data or data that they believe is correct, then they go to their state committee to determine that yield. So it's real scientific.
Your idea is too much common sense, though.
Well, there's a few people that actually do agree with me in DC.
Really?
Yeah, there is. But I think they may have to write it in legislation. But they have the ear of people who could actually write it in legislation. They may have to actually tell USDA to do it that way. Since they haven't, the thinking was when they put this in, see, they authorized them to use the crop insurance data. They put that in the law, thinking that they would use it first and NAS second. But USDA itself hasn't done that. The Secretary has authority to do exactly what I'm saying. So if you become president, you can name me secretary and I'll fix that tomorrow.
You were running against Hillary, though. Why don't you tell her?
Well, I can take the job under Hillary, but I don't want to stay but a month or two. All right, enough of that nonsense. Anyway, moving on. So we know we got a solid number here. Now the question is, what are the odds of going to losing this payment? Well, what this is telling you is that the yield has to drop below 42.6. I mean, it could, but it's quite a ways, at least in percentage terms, above what we have here for a NAS yield. And it's got to be below 42.6 in order for it to cut into that payment. In other words, there's a pretty darn good chance they're going to get $27.69. Okay? Now, to completely eliminate the payment, the yield has to get above 48.2, and that's really very unlikely. As I showed these numbers, so what this tells you, you can look at these numbers and have a feel for how solid is the estimate when you're preparing your cash flow budgets. How great are the odds I'm actually going to get payments? When we showed these numbers the first day, the guys there didn't think that was enough information. They wanted more. And we can do this. Lynn was with me when I called the folks that really know how to do things back at the office to make sure the software would handle more numbers, and it will. They wanted us to add what we're using for not just our projected yield, but they also wanted to know what the Olympic average price yield that we were using. The Olympic average yield is a formula, and it is NASA's number, but they haven't sprinkled holy water on it yet, so it's not, you know, I suppose they could change it, but it's supposed to be a formula, and we calculated what the Olympic average yield will be, but to my knowledge, FSA hasn't actually published that number yet. And we also calculate the Olympic average price. That one I'm pretty certain of, because the Olympic average price is the NAS price, and and FSA does not change the NASH prices. The prices do not change. The yields, they do change, but not the prices. So they wanted to know what the Olympic average price and Olympic average yield that we were using, and they also wanted to know what our calculated guarantee was. So 3 more numbers that they would like to have on those. Not a problem. We're going to put them there within the next few days. They'll be there. So there'll be a little more than what we're showing as far as this goes. Okay? Now, the NASH number on the 5-year Olympic average price, that's a NASH number. And where it comes from, at least this is the theory, is they contact the big elevators. We're talking about ADM, Cargill, you know, in this organization, the crooks. That's funny, guys. Come on, laugh. Not a nice co-op. They wouldn't do that. But they call them, and then they survey some of the smaller elevators. Not all the smaller elevators have to complete it. But basically what they have to report is how many bushels of wheat corn did they buy during the month, and what was the total dollars they paid for the corn. You simply then take the numbers from all of the elevators, you total up the total bushels, the total dollars, and you divide the 2 numbers, and you come up with the monthly average price. That's where it comes from. Now, one of the questions I often get is, what about the forward contracted bushels? My understanding is they're not supposed to be in that number. In other words, you forward contracted some grain, and it's at a higher price than what the current spot price is. I can't absolutely guarantee you that because I've never filled one of those out, obviously, but that's the concept of how they come up with the number. Okay? And then at the end of the marketing year, which will be September 1, what they will do is calculate the total bushels bought during the whole year. Simply sum them up. And then they calculate what percentage of those bushels were purchased in each of the months. That's where the weights come from. So like, you got a weight of 15, that means 15% of the entire crop sold that year was sold in that month. So that's how they get to the weighted average price. The PLC is based only on NASH prices, so there's really nothing there that FSA can adjust that would make the difference in the outcome. The difference comes on the NASH yield. Now, and here's the theory. They take the NASH yield, which is the total bushels in the county, they sum those up, and they divide it by harvested acres plus failed acres. Again, it's all survey data. Now, where do they get the failed acres number from? They go to RMA to get the failed acres number. But it's not a public number. You don't know exactly, did they fudge that number a little bit, or they thought it was off a little bit. There's a lot of room, judgment call, that they can make. Then on top of that, if you don't have a NASH yield to start with, and a lot of counties won't because none of the surveys get returned, then you start getting into things where it's established by the state committee and that sort of thing. Again, someone outside the organization, such as myself, can't really pinpoint that number. I'm pinpointing it by using standard statistical procedures to estimate it, but that doesn't mean an estimate is an estimate. That means it's got error around it. At this point, there are no NASH yields for the corn and other things, and so I am at this point strictly estimating it. If you want to know what's driving our model, it's basically the Olympic average yield for that county and the crop insurance loss ratio. Those are the only 2 numbers that came in as significant into our regression model. The theory being is that if you have a really high crop insurance loss ratio, probably means a lot of farmers had poor yields. Probably means low yields. That's probably what it means. And so therefore, if the loss ratio is really high, the county yields are probably going to be low. And vice versa. If the loss ratio is really low, probably the yields were high. That's what we're trying, and that's what's driving it, okay? Again, if FSA is, if they're missing no NASH yields, they can't go use the crop insurance yields. I'm not sure they take that directly, raw numbers. That's what I would do with it. Those numbers are reported. The criminal liability of taxes, once they're reported, when you sign off, you're certifying they are correct. And so I think that's the most accurate county yield, but that's not the way they go at it. The last resort is the go state committee. In 2015, we've got wheat yields out there in some counties, but not all counties. The key number date for you is February 18th. That's when they're going to put out NASH yields for corn and soybeans. But again, my anticipation is that there will be a lot of counties that won't have a number because not enough surveys were returned. That's normal. That is true with the wheat since we already got those out. Now, even though we don't have a good feel for what this yield is, we can still generate a number of things that give you information, I think. You can calculate the maximum yield that you can have that will generate the maximum ARC payment. In other words, what is the yield level that your yield has to come in under in order for you to get the maximum payment? And if you're a long ways under, that tells you there's a real big chance you're going to end up with that payment. You can also calculate the minimum yield that will eliminate the payment. In other words, what is the yield level that if you get a yield above that, there is no payment. And if it's a long ways out of the money, then you can pretty well be assured there will be no cash coming this fall from Uncle Sam. You're going to have to make do with whatever you've got to make that farm work, okay? So, on the extremes, now the problem is it's those yields that come in right where they trigger a payment but don't trigger the maximum. They're kind of in that middle area. Because there's a lot of error around these estimates, see that yield can move a little bit one way or the other, and you'd either be at the maximum payment or none. Those are the counties that this will provide the least amount of information for, but as I said, they get better as you go along. There are names on each one of these. These are just definitions of them. The yield type is whether it's irrigated or non-irrigated or combined. The estimated payment is based on our estimate of yield and price, unless USDA's put out a number, and we use their number if they have a number. The estimated yield, again, coming from us, unless NAS puts one out, and then we use theirs. We calculated the maximum payment in the county, and the yield that would trigger it. You need to have a yield below that, and then the trigger yield is how low does that yield have to be to trigger that first penny of loss. That first penny of loss. In other words, if you need a yield below $200 to get any payment, 200 bushels, excuse me, if you need a yield below 200 bushels to get any payment, and your yield comes in at 201, your payment's zero. If it comes in at 199, you're going to get a small check. Okay? Actually, positive bank, I guess. Give you some examples here, and extreme examples. First of all, you can see, I said you can blow up the map and just blow up a section of the state. That's what this is. So now, these are just a section of southwest Kansas, so 4 or 5 counties that I've highlighted. Again, it's combined. No, it's not split between irrigated and dry land. The estimated payment in this county is 0. The maximum payment is $15.19. This is a NASH yield. It's not a KSU estimate, and it's at 41.4. Now, to trigger any payment, you got to yield below 26.4. Are these farmers getting any payments from Uncle this year? Not a chance in hell. Slim and none. Slim left town. 0. What don't you get? It's 0. None. What do you write down in your cash flow budget? Oh, half of what I got last year, and hope my lender doesn't know K-State's got this information out there. But in any case, you can, so I think that gives you, if your county comes in this, it's not good news, but if your county comes in like this, at least you know what it is. And I think information is, even bad news, is better to know early than late. And that we can provide for you, for those farmers in that county. Now, here's contrasting county. This is northwest Kansas, and this is Rawlins County. Right now, they're setting at the maximum payment. The NASH yield's at 35.4. To cut into that NASH payment at all, which is at the maximum, you need a yield above 42.3 to cut the payment at all. That's quite a move. It usually only moves maybe 1 or 2% if you want to know how much it moves from the NASH yield. So when you're looking at a NASH yield, now the K-State estimate will have more error, but if you're looking at a NASH yield, which you are here, it's identified, then 1 or 2% is about all it's going to move. So I would say you can take that to the bank. They're getting that amount of money, and you know that today. And again, I would argue that is something that's kind of nice to know when you're trying to put plans together for next year. If you're in, And that's the good news. If you're in that position, you're gonna get those payments. Because remember, what's this payment on? This is a payment that these guys harvested last July. Or in your case, it's the yield you cut last fall. So it's not, next year's crop may be great. It could be a real bust. You got no cash because the yield is way off. Where's the worst yield you can get? Half a crop. Because you don't really get much of an insurance payment. Guess what? You got to write a check for the insurance payment too. And you got a lot less cash to work with. All these guys who write, and I'm talking about critics, that you make money collecting from crop insurance, they all forget about that deductible on the front end. And most of you are not at the maximum, maybe you are, but even then it's 15%. Probably most of you are at least 20% deductible. That's a pretty big chunk to eat right off the top. In any case, in this county, and to completely eliminate the payment, it would have to get, back up. To eliminate the payment, it'd have to get above 47 bushels, and that just, if it does, people got things, got some questions going to have to be answered at that point. There's no way. This is interesting what I'm showing you here, and this is going to cause controversy because here's Ellis County sitting at 2166, and right next door Rush with 0. And people are then going to go, well, how'd you come up with that county yield, which I explained to you how flaky that thing is to start with. It's not like it's a real hard number that you can go back and check. Okay? It's kind of wherever USDA says it is. And in this case, the maximum payment would be $20.21. The NASH yield, again, it's not a KSU estimate, so it's a pretty hard number, 35.1. Now, it would change somewhat if the price changed, but remember, we're deep into marketing here on the wheat, so the price doesn't change a lot. It could change a little bit, and the yield could change a little bit. In this particular county, if it changed a little bit in your favor, you would get into some payments. Probably not the maximum though, but notice that yield is only what? 1 point above the trigger point. The trigger point is 35 bushels, and you're at 35.1. So if the yield is 1/10 of a bushel lower, or 2/10 of a bushel lower, it would start to trigger payments. Now it'd be real small, but you would trigger payments. But it's got to get all the way down to 30.9 before you max it out. So I don't think there's much chance they're going to get a maximum payment. It is possible they might get a small one. Okay? Now this is Ellis County. They're at the maximum payment, right next door to Rush. And actually sent this to one of the senator's office from my state, because you're going to get questions on this, of how those numbers could be that much different. But nonetheless, and this is NASH yield. I'm not using KSU yield on this. Anyway, 37.7 would eliminate the payment, to trigger a yield. Wait a minute, what am I looking at here? Oh, the estimated yield is 32.9. Oh, I'm at the maximum, I'm sorry. At 32.9, so I'm at the maximum. Now, if it goes a little bit higher, because we're at 33.3, then if this number comes up a little higher, say 34 bushels, for example, that would start to cut into this 2166. But it'd have to get all the way to 37.7 before it'd be eliminated. So I'm pretty comfortable they're going to get payments. And a chance it's going to be at the maximum. Okay? Chance it's going to be at the maximum. And next door, nothing. Moving on to Minnesota, this is Minnesota wheat. These are the payment estimates. And again, a lot of these are NAS payments. Here's your county. It's combined. Y'all threw your surveys away. So what you get is a KSU estimate. Now, the KSU estimate is better on wheat than is corn. The reason is because they put out 2015 yields in some counties, is we take the KSU model and recast it, rerun it, and see how well it does predicting the 2015 counties. And I've done that. For example, how far off do you think the estimate was from the NASH yield that was reported in the selected counties they reported in? I've tested that in Kansas. We were 9/10 of a bushel below the NAS number, 9/10 of a bushel. So for wheat, I would argue, since you don't have real numbers, you're trying to estimate these numbers. That's in economic terms, that's close enough. I mean, that's as good as you're going to get. I realize close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, but That's about as good as you're gonna get, without real numbers. Even so, the NAS number's not final, remember that too. So it's possible I could be right and NAS could be wrong. Because the NAS number's not right either, because FSA may start with that, but they adjust on the NAS number. So it's not an absolute. Nothing's an absolute. It's so much fun being an economist with nothing absolute. But nonetheless, this is the estimate payment. I do showing an estimated payment here. The maximum payment is $29.70, and this is one of those yields that's is right there in the middle. It's higher than the yield required to trigger the maximum payment, but it's below the yield that's required to make some payment. So in this particular location, you're in that land where it could go either way. So movement either way could either make the payment bigger or make it smaller. Unfortunately, that's not a clear-cut thing. I even put this up here to make it perfectly clear that the numbers on the corn and soybeans are going to be a lot better come March 1st. And it's in the computer model itself. I debated whether or not we should release the corn and soybean numbers since they were all estimates at this point. We didn't have any NAS numbers to calibrate against. But I still thought it provided enough information that perhaps it would be useful, but recognize the numbers will get a lot better on March 1st. In the case of Minnesota, you do have some counties that are split, and so you have to select that when you go on the website. There's the non-irrigated numbers. At this point, we don't have an estimated yield for this county. And the same thing for the irrigated counties. Most of Minnesota are combined yields, irrigated and dry land together. And in this case, that's what the map would look like. Again, highlighting the area that we're interested in. So we highlighted Sibley. At this point, it's a combined county. Estimated payments, 85.82. The maximum payment is 85.82. That's based on a yield of 162. And that's our estimate. You know, that if that comes back with a NAS yield, we will replace it, and that will show up in this menu. It'll be labeled either KSU or NAS. You need a payment below 177 to trigger the maximum payment. And if our estimate's correct, you're there. If you got a yield above 200, there is no payment. And therein, yesterday, folks thought my number was way too low. And maybe you're thinking that too. You know more about yield here than I do. But the point is, once those NAS numbers come out, let's say the NAS numbers come out to 200 where we had 166, we'll recalibrate our model to the NAS numbers we know to predict the county numbers where NAS doesn't put a number out. That's why the number will get better after February 18th, okay? Just out of curiosity, think the county yield's going to end up over 200? One of you do, okay. I don't have any reason to argue one way or the other, but come back on February the 18th, and we'll see where we're at. And NAS, pardon me?
I said I'm not from Sibley County. I'm not from Sibley County.
Oh, you're not from Sibley County, okay. The good news is this software is every county in the U.S. We've got every county in the U.S. in this, and I showed you how you go on, you pull it up, you expand the size of the state you're interested in, and then you can, again, highlight the portion of the state that you're interested in and get down to the counties that you really want to look at. How do you find out about that? How do you find about the estimated update on prices and other things? Actually, it's pretty easy to do. You can either go to agmanager.info and get it off our website directly, or if you like a little easier way, we maintain an email list, and every time we update our website, we send out a short email note to everybody's on our email list telling us what's been updated. So like when we update with February 18th numbers, we'll send out an email that the maps have been updated. You'll get an email on it, and it'll tell you what it is, and it will give you a link directly to that site. So the advantage is you just click on the link, it takes you right there. You don't have to go to a menu and look for it, etc. The other thing is if you can't find something on our website, you know it's there, email us. Rich usually is in, he'll respond back right away. Or the other alternative is email Robin Reed. Either one can help you with locating stuff on the website. If all else fails, you can email me. So But if you'd like to be on our website or on our email list, I'm going to pass the list around. All you have to do is leave me your email address. Now, don't put your name and email address on there unless you want to hear from us, because I guarantee you, you will hear from us. Some of you probably got that email from that young lady who wants to beat you. I'm pretty sure she doesn't. I'm not sure what the scam is. But some of you may get enough junk mail now. So if you don't want any more junk mail, and you know you're not going to use it, don't leave us your email address. Some of you may already be on our email list, and if you are, you're going to be hearing from us. Let's see, where did my click start? Okay. Anyway, I dropped somewhere the slide that dropped out that showed me the end, because we don't have time to talk about the cuts that are in the program. Well, hopefully we kind of went through and reminded you of how the program works, showed you what the numbers are today, which we know are going to get a lot better when those reports come out on February the 18th. We know that the maps will be updated so you get a better picture of where you're at as far as any projected payments for this fall, okay? And that you have a better understanding so you don't end up like the poor folks down in Louisiana. Let me tell you about their confusion. Now, it's okay for me to tell this story because my wife takes me to the right church, okay? Anyway, there was this priest, elderly priest down in Louisiana, and he was quite embarrassed by people in the parish coming in and confessing to adultery. Embarrassed the heck out of him. And he decided to end all that, so he announced at Mass one day, when you come to confession, just tell me you fell in the bayou. I'll recognize that you broke one of God's 10 commandments. I will prescribe the appropriate penance. Well, this all worked out fine until he retired and he forgot to tell the new priest about the arrangement. Anyway, this fellow was in one day and he says, "Father, forgive me for I sinned. I fell in the bayou." And this young priest just started shaking his head. He said, "I've got no idea what the penance for that should be. But I can tell you this much. That bayou is dangerous. You guys should build a fence around it. Because your wife was in this morning and she fell in it too." So hopefully you are fully informed on the farm program now and not living in confusion like that young priest. Thank you for having me. And I hope I didn't offend anybody with that story.